We were casting about for a video montage of clips that best sum up the force and the amount of institutional lying we in this country have endured over the past 3 or 4 years. And there were so many to choose from. But in the end, we settled on this because it summed it up pretty nicely. Watch.
So there's no excuse for anyone being unvaccinated. This continues to be a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
A pandemic and an outbreak of the unvaccinated.
This is really becoming a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
This is becoming a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
This is now a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
A pandemic of the unvaccinated.
This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
So again, we could have chose many different topics to remind you of how much lying you have had to live through over the past several years. That just seemed like the most obvious and in some ways the most hilarious. But what's really interesting about it is how the people around you responded. A very large percentage knew it was false because the evidence suggests overwhelmingly that it was, but went along with it anyway on the grounds that it's not even worth fighting back against people that powerful. So I'll sort of go along with it. Some smaller percentage actually believed it, and you learn something very sad about them, which is that they're credulous, in some cases not super geniuses. But there was an even smaller percentage who decided, well, wait a second, no, that's not true. And you can't make me say it's true. Under no circumstances will I knowingly lie because it's immoral and it diminishes me. And by repeating your lies, I reveal myself not as a free person or a citizen, but as a slave. And I'm not going to do that, period. And it was watching those people emerge from the most unlikely places in many cases that was the thrill and has been the ongoing thrill and joy of living in this otherwise very sad moment. And one of the people we watched do that was someone, to be honest, didn't expect to see, but not only did it, but kept doing it to a lot of abuse. And that was Naomi Wolf, who's been in the public sphere for 35 years anyway, writing and commenting on various things. And she's one of the people who decided, I'm not going to say something I think is not true, period. And so she's lived the last few years of her life like that. And she's the author of a new book about what that experience is like and has been like. It's called Facing the Beast, Courage, Faith, and Resistance in a New Dark Age, what kind of sums it up. And we are honored to have her here in the studio. Naomi Wolf, thank you so much for coming. So what's so interesting, as I said, is the effect that this moment, and it's not just a public health story, I don't think, but this moment of lying has had on certain people. So can you just tell us in broad terms when you started to realize this was happening, what effect it had on you, and what your life has been like since?
Sure. Thank you for that kind introduction.
Well, of course, heartfelt.
Thank you. Well, I realized the whole culture was lying by about July of 2020 because luckily for me, I'd written a book called The End of America in 2007 during the Bush Jr. era. And
which, by the way, admission, I never even considered reading that book because I was like, Naomi Wolf's on the other side. This is probably stupid. And it just shows how stupid I was. Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to admit that.
It's like we were all wearing blinders
Yes.
about ideology at
Yes.
that time and probably till recently. But the reason it was lucky that I had gone through that is that I had looked for my research for that book at times and places throughout history where a fragile democracy had been undermined and there had been a coup, essentially, whether by fascist forces on the right or totalitarian forces on the left.
Yeah.
I learned that tyrants always do the same 10 things. They took 10 steps to closing an open society. So from having done that research, I saw quickly when Governor Cuomo announced that we couldn't meet with more than 6 people at once in our homes in New York State, and, we couldn't assemble to pray. I realized we were at step 10, which is martial law. It's emergency law. It's the last step.
We're already at step 10.
We're already, they fast forwarded. They jumped over all the other 9 steps. And I realized how dangerous that was because once you have emergency law, anything can happen. And then when I realized that I personally was being, damaged by powerful forces for not lying, that was a year later, pretty much in June of 2021, when I was doing what I've done for 35 years, which is reporting on a woman's health issue.
Yeah.
I've written 3 bestsellers about women's sexual and reproductive health. It's not a new beat for me. No. And so I was reporting on Twitter that women were reporting eyewitness accounts of themselves, that they were having menstrual dysregulation or symptoms upon receiving the mRNA injection, which had at that point rolled out. And I literally just accurately reported this and said something like, it bears more investigation. And I was overnight, all at once, it was very extraordinary, deplatformed from Twitter, from Facebook, from YouTube, but also all the newspapers out and news outlets where I'd been a commentator or columnist for 35 years, ran pieces smearing me and saying I was, spreading misinformation and I was an anti-vaxxer, and my Wikipedia page changed overnight, which I now understand better because I didn't understand the role of AI at that point in journalism. And basically, I became a non-person on the left. I was kicked out overnight from my comfortable perch, in the liberal elite media. It was incredibly painful. One of my best friends left the country without saying goodbye because she was disappointed in my position on vaccines. Literally, my position was, here are some facts that are emerging. It's like that was my position. Let's see, we were not invited to Thanksgivings. We had, Christmas of 2021. Maybe it was 2022. President Biden gave his famous, it's going to be a winter of severe disease and death.
For unvaccinated, we are looking at a winter of severe illness and death for unvaccinated. For themselves, their families, and the hospitals they'll soon overwhelm.
And we had a, Christmas vacation with a lot of loved ones planned, and it all got canceled, because everyone was in a state of fear because the president on down was saying at that point that, unvaccinated people, let alone people who were trying to warn people about some of the side effects that were emerging, were dangerous dissidents who were carrying plague, and no amount of reason would break through. But yeah, there were a lot of very painful endings of friendships. And as I wrote in Facing the Beast, it wasn't just on the kind of rejecting side, right? I wasn't just on the receiving end. I was witnessing the creation overnight, especially by 2021, 2022 in New York City, where most of my friendships were and most of my colleagues were, but also in Washington, the creation of a 2-tier society, exactly along the same lines as a Jim Crow society or, during the occupation in France when Jews couldn't go certain places.
Or a Stalinist society.
Exactly. And all these people who were so right on, who were leaders in the feminist movement, who would never discriminate against people of color or against people in the LGBTQ community,
Yes.
who opposed discrimination, embraced discrimination. They were fine with it. They were fine with a city, the greatest city on earth, the most diverse city on earth, famous melting pot city, New York City. They were fine with a situation in which unvaccinated people had to eat in the street like animals.
Thanks a lot for watching us on X. There is a lot more to see, and you can find it on tuckercarlson.com. We hope you'll join us.